I'm Eve, and I am a compulsive eater. And like you, I weigh and measure 3 meals a day from the gray sheet. I commit those meals to my sponsor. I don't eat in between, no matter what. And abstinence is the most important thing in my life, without exception. My abstinence date is March 25th, 1994. First of all, I want to say thank you, Stephanie, for inviting me to speak. Um, you know, doing this as long as I've been doing it, it's like, what am I going to talk about? Well, I guess I'm just going to tell you how I found Gray Sheet. I had initially I found OA, and I was very successful in OA. And then I decided that I knew I had a problem with sugar, but you know, I've been doing it long enough, and I didn't need to go to the meetings. And I found a new love in my life, and so I stepped away. And it wasn't very long before the boyfriend became the husband. The husband, I divorced him, and I went into a very deep, deep depression. And of course, what do you do when you're depressed? I turned to food, and with a vengeance. They say when you start, you go to the top floor. You don't start in the basement. And the only other time in my life, because I dieted from the time I was 13, and I was a successful dieter. The only time that I didn't was when I was pregnant with my second daughter, and I bloomed up to 225 pounds, and the doctor said, "You're going to lose this baby, you're going to die." I had toxemia, I had gestational diabetes, but I couldn't stop. I could not stop. And I was exactly at that same point in my life where I just couldn't stop. I would make promises to myself, but I just couldn't stop. And this one particular day, I had to see my accountant. I walked in, and I had seen him for a year, and he said, "Wow, you really porked up." At this point, I was 190 pounds. And it, you know, I don't know, I wasn't looking at myself except head up, and I didn't pass mirrors. I wouldn't look. And on my way home on my way back to the office, it was in the morning. The street was being blacktop, so I had to take a detour. And when I took that detour, I passed a very small shopping center, and it had a health food store. And at this point, that was the other thing. I would go to health food stores because if I got healthy food, and the person who was there was a woman that I knew from OA, but I saw her in she was vibrant, full of life, just so, and she was thin and she looked gorgeous. And I just, "Oh, I want what you have. What are you doing?" Whatever she was I didn't care what it was. And she pulls out a copy of a gray sheet. And she said, "I'm doing gray sheet." And I said, "Oh, gray sheet? You mean that thing that I did when I was in OA for 30 days?" She said, "Yes, it's a whole community and da 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 da. And I'm going to give you a phone number." And she gave me a phone number, a long distance phone number. And I got to my office. It was about 10:30. And I called this woman, and dear heart, she took me with the first 3 steps. And I never thought I had a problem with food, but I certainly could say that my life was insanity. I mean, total insanity. And so she said, "Well," and I thought, it was a Tuesday that we would start on Monday. This is how I did all my diet. She said, "No, we're going to start with lunch." So uh, I, I, I said, "Lunch? I don't have lunch." So anyway, somehow or other, I put together, I'm sure, the same lunch that everybody has the first time. And then we made arrangements for me to call her at a certain time. And the next day I was to call her. And I called her when I got home because by then I knew what I was going to be able to eat, because I never ever gave my food unless I had it. It wasn't something in my brain. I learned from the very beginning. And she was a very wise woman. I was 55 at the time, and she was 70. And she took me, I was watching a nature program, and these wildebeest There was one that was born and it could barely stand on its legs. And the first thing it had to do was stand on its legs. So the first thing I had to do was really learn the gray sheet. And I had to read this wonderful document every single day because that was my ticket to sanity. And so when I called her on Wednesday, I gave her my food for Wednesday, and I said, but tomorrow, Thursday, I'm going to a luncheon of my peers, 200 people at a hotel, and they're 10 people to a table. And all I had was a postage scale. They didn't have digital scales. I didn't even know where to get a digital scale. And I said, I'm not going to be able to, weigh and measure my lunch. And she said, oh, no, 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 no. We do this everywhere. Weddings, funerals, luncheons, meetings, doesn't matter. I thought, oh my God, how am I going to? She said, it's okay. We're going to walk this through. We're going to do this together. That's the first thing I learned. I didn't have to do this by myself. She had me call the hotel, find out what they were going to serve. They weren't going to serve anything green. So I had to bring my little bag full. The only thing I had was, the fluffy stuff. I didn't have any hard stuff. So it was a pretty big thing. And I worried so much. I hardly slept that night. I got to the hotel and I found the room and I found the person who was going to be serving. And I explained to her exactly what my sponsor told me to do, is that I had a medical condition and that I had to weigh and measure my food and that I had to have this green stuff. And she said, no problem, I'll help you. I'll just tap you on the shoulder when it's time and you can come back here and weigh your food, because I knew the protein and the vegetable was going to be okay. So she served it to me. And I want to tell you, when I finished that luncheon, I was on cloud nine. I was 10 feet tall. It was the very first time in my life that I ever did anything for Eve. Everybody was always first. If it was a burnt piece, I got it. It didn't matter. And my sponsor taught me from the very beginning that I had to take care of myself. This was a self-care program. It was a selfish program in that I had to take care of myself, but it was a reprogram in that I didn't have to do it by myself. I had to make 3 phone calls every day. And those 3 phone calls, I had to get phone numbers because there weren't any other people who were doing Gray Sheet in my area in Florida at the time. So I had to create my community. My sponsor said, I'm available, but I'm not available 24/7. So you need to have other people that you can call in the emergency. Well, believe me, I never had an emergency because you had to have change. You had to make because most of the people I was calling were in New York or Michigan. Those were places where. And so I learned from the very beginning. I got a really good foundation. And I'm so grateful for that because it's kept me abstinent all this time. I did make a couple of mistakes. That my first day of measuring was January 19, 1994, but I made 2 mistakes. One, I couldn't eat everything, and one, I was doing something and I put something in my mouth without thinking about it. So I learned that I had to have a toothpick in my mouth if I was preparing food so that I wouldn't put all these things you learn. And you learn from speaking to other people, how they stayed abstinent. That's the key. I'm in the middle of the herd. I'm not alone. If I'm the straggler, little baby that's out there, the hyena is going to get me. That disease. And that's how I picture my disease. The disease is going to get me because I have a disease that tells me I don't have a disease. And I have to constantly remind myself, no, you do have a disease. You have to take care of yourself. But I didn't have to do it except one day at a time. Whenever I would say to my sponsor, well, you mean I can never have this? And she said, well, not today. We can talk about it tomorrow, but not today. We do this one, and you can do anything and it's true. You can do anything for one day. And that's exactly how I took my program, was one day at a time. And the other thing that I have to stress is the importance of having a sponsor that you can relate to, that you trust, because you're putting your life in their hands. And I was so afraid of making a mistake or doing something that was going to displease my sponsor that it kept. Oh my goodness. Okay, so I got to get to the present. So now I'm here. I just want to let you know that I just turned in February 85. And I'm in better health than I was at 55 when I came into this program. I'm in better shape than I was at 55 when I came into this program. And I have so much to be grateful for. I did service from the very beginning because I didn't want to be that kid on the outside looking in the window and seeing what everybody was doing. And the way to do that is you do service. Because we were such a small community, we were just building. As soon as I had 90 days, I had to sponsor somebody. I had to lead meetings because we were so small. And I'm grateful for that because that's what you need to do. I needed to do that. Service is very important. I got on the board for a few years. I was there when we acquired the GreySheet. I've always did service at all the meetings. I backed off a little bit because at this age, but I'm in an AWOL. I'm in a How to Listen to God group we're in our 6th year. Can you believe it? The same group we've been doing How to Listen to God. We haven't always read just How to Listen to God. We read other things. And I go to at least 3 meetings a week. And if I'm having a little difficulty, I'll increase that. But the beauty of the pandemic was that we got to have meetings on Zoom, and you get to meet people from all over the world, not just, locally or in the United States, but all over the world. How lucky are we? This is not something we had in the beginning. I mean, to make a long distance phone call meant making the big thing was when you got a little card and it had like 30 numbers that you had to put in, and you could credit, get the phone number so that you didn't have to. Anyway, we are so lucky today that we have Zoom, we have WhatsApp. I have a sponsor now. I've only had 2 sponsors all my life, all my GreySheet life, and I can call her even if she's traveling with WhatsApp. Right now she's traveling, and I talk to my sponsor every day, and I've always, both my sponsors. I need to talk to my sponsor every day. I recently had a health issue, and I literally had to go from one meal to the other with my sponsor deciding what I could eat, because sometimes I couldn't eat it all. I'm back to being normal and healthy, but I didn't have to do it alone. And nobody here has to do it alone. We're in community. We have a wonderful, wonderful community. There isn't anything that you need to go through that someone else in the community hasn't gone through, and they'll help you. That's what we're all here for. We're here to help each other. It's a we program in that we don't have to do it by ourselves. So that's my 1 minute, or is that up? 1 minute. Okay. Well, all I want to say to leave you with the last thing is that this is a program that you don't have to do alone. And I used to question things. And once I accepted that this was what I needed to do, and I recommend, and I used to recommend it, I don't have any brand new sponsor, but read the GreySheet. When was the last time you read the GreySheet? I read it this morning. It's got so much good information. So I leave you with that. Read the GreySheet. And thank you for letting me share. And thank you for being here.